Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Facebook Live. Today we are here at Acorn Hollow, located just north of Galena, Illinois. And today we are going to learn a little bit about conservation easements. So I am here with our JDCF's Land Protection Director, Jim Johansson, and Cindy Martinovic, the owner of Acorn Hollow. So Jim, can you tell us what exactly is a conservation easement?
That's a very complicated question, so I'll try to give you the short version. Basically, a conservation easement is a permanent legal agreement between a landowner like Cindy and a conservation organization like JDCF. And within the terms of that agreement, it allows the landowner to place certain restrictions on the land designed to protect what we call the conservation values of the land. So that could be natural habitat, like the prairie you see behind us, or the savanna that's over on my left. It could be historic or cultural values, like Native American mounds or village sites. It could be scenic values. It could be open space, like farmland, or it could be recreational values. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
And so why might somebody be interested in establishing a conservation easement on their property?
So conservation easements are a way to create permanent nature preserves or conservation areas or parks without actually having to have the land be owned by a conservation group. When most of us think of conservation areas, we think of our local park or our local forest preserve or our local state park or even national park. Conservation easements keep land in private ownership, like with Cindy. But it comes with all the benefits of having the land owned by a public. Sorry, we have some visitors over on my left here. It comes with all the benefits of having the land owned by a nonprofit like JDCF or by a government agency, because it protects those natural habitats, those historic features, in perpetuity, which is basically the fancy way of saying forever. So Cindy's had this land for about 16 years now or so, and she plans to have it for a lot longer than that. But there may come a time when the land is sold, and the nice thing about a conservation easement is that the land is going to be protected under that same easement regardless of whoever owns the land. So it's a permanent way of protecting land without having to take the land out of private ownership.
Jim, we have a question.
Okay.
Who decides what is in the conservation easement?
Who decides what is in the conservation easement? Well, when we did the conservation easement here at Acorn Hollow, it was a process of Cindy and I going back and forth and figuring out a couple of things. The first thing was we had to consider exactly what Cindy wanted to use the land for now in the future. So she wanted to make sure that the prairie was always protected, so we made sure the prairie couldn't get plowed up or built on or anything like that. Cindy also has horses, so she has a hay field over on my right, and we made sure that the easement allowed for hay production. And then from JDCF's perspective, it's a question of putting appropriate restrictions in place that are going to offer adequate protections to whatever features are out here, whether they're natural or historic or other features.
So it sounds like there's a combination of both JDCF and the landowner that kind of makes that decision.
That's right.
Very cool. Thank you. So I know Jim answered a couple questions for us. Cindy, how long have you owned this property? And he said about 17 years or so. Now, could you also tell us a little bit about how you and Mike have used this property?
Mike and I have a horse boarding operation towards the suburbs. So our main focus at the beginning was being able to come out here and bring our horses and enjoy trails and riding in this beautiful landscape. My husband's also a hunter, and so he wanted a place where he could groom it to have habitat for animals like deer and turkeys so that he could hunt. So we use it for that. But I've also kind of wanted to have a piece of land that I could restore and create a prairie and make more healthy. And this land lent itself very well to that. And so we've been working on that for 17 years now.
Awesome. So yeah, I know that you guys have been out here a lot, almost every week, kind of doing a lot of that work. Can you tell us why exactly did you decide to put the land in a conservation easement?
Well, it's a lot of work creating these habitats and making things so that they're more natural and better habitat. I'd like it to stay that way while I'm here, and I will do that. But I'm not getting any younger, and I would like to make sure that when I'm gone, that this place stays like it is, so that what I've created can be forever, or in perpetuity, for the fancy word.
So establishing a conservation easement isn't done very quickly. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about what that process looks like and how long it takes to get a conservation easement established?
Sure. So the first step is to just give me a call or shoot me an email. You can find our information on our website. And the first step in the process is just a meeting. Cindy called me up, I think a little bit more than a year ago. We came out and we talked about her interest in the land and what her goals for the land were. And we have a set of criteria that we use to judge whether a property would be a good fit for our conservation easement program. And in this case, it was a slam dunk. This is exactly the type of project that we like to have in our easement portfolio. Generally speaking, if we work really, really quickly, we could probably do an easement from start to finish in about 6 months. Although to do it right and to go into it with everybody feeling good and making sure we have all of the I's dotted and T's crossed, it's usually more like 12 months. But we've had landowners that take as much as 2 years or more, just because it takes that long to work through all of the nitty-gritty details. Doing an easement is a little bit like trying to gaze into your crystal ball and predict the future, which is not exactly an easy thing to do. So I always encourage landowners to take as much time as you need to be comfortable with it and go into the easement eyes wide open.
And let's say somebody's not quite ready to establish a conservation easement. What are options for folks who don't want to take that step? What can they do before they would do that?
So we do have another program called our land registry. The land registry is a pledge program designed to help landowners like Cindy manage their property to the highest degree, whether they're trying to manage for natural habitat or agricultural values. Cindy enrolled in that program. I don't even know how long ago that was. So it was probably about 15 years ago. Cindy was one of the first registrants in our land registry. So as part of that program, the landowner pledges to manage the property for conservation to the best of their ability. And in exchange for making that pledge, JDCF offers some degree of technical assistance. If Cindy ever has questions about how to undertake a certain aspect of management, or if we at JDCF find a funding opportunity or a cost-sharing opportunity that might align with Cindy's goals, we'll pass that information on. And after being in the land registry for about 15 years, and Cindy and other landowners like Cindy have often upgraded to doing a permanent conservation easement.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Cindy, for joining us today. This is really good information. So if anybody in the audience has any questions for Jim and Cindy, now's a good time to go ahead and type them in. And even after we end this session, you can go ahead and type them into the comment section. We can come around later on and answer your questions.
So we have one question.
Okay, great.
So the word easement implies public access. Is that part of this or not?
Very good question. No, there is no public access on a conservation easement, unless you really want to write that in there. But about 99.99% of landowners don't want that. So access is completely controlled by the landowner. Cindy decides who comes out here and who doesn't come out here. yeah, it's just not part of the deal.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right.
Thanks everybody for joining us today, and thanks to our sponsors, the First Community Bank of Galena, Apple River State Bank. You guys have been great sponsors for us. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you all next Thursday.